question I want to ask. Offensive speech, is it equal to hate speech? Should offensive speech lead to arrest and criminalization? Are Netas intolerant of criticism? And are politicians and the public in general selective when it comes to free speech? Joining me now, Rajat Sethi, political analyst who's been close to the BJP. Shantanu Sen is Trinamool Congress MP. Supriya Srinath is Congress's spokesperson. Siddharth Sharma is AAP spokesperson. And Mahesh Tapse is NCP spokesperson. So all bases covered. I'm going to ask each of you very specific questions. You, Rajat Sethi, first, because the Delhi Police comes under the Union Home Ministry. And the fact is that what does the Home Ministry or the Delhi Police go and do? You file FIRs against Nupur Sharma for hate speech allegedly involving the Prophet, and then also bring in Asaduddin, Owaisi and others trying to create false equivalence. It seems almost like a balancing act done to placate BJP supporters who are angry that an FIR is being filed against their leader. The BJP has not even come on this show. Your response?
Well, Rajdeep ji, if you cherry pick one case over the other and carry on this debate, you can never reach to good, conclusive answers. The topic that you raised, the difference between free speech, offensive speech, and to what extent an absolute free speech would look like, you need to take a more nuanced, a more intellectual perspective. Right from the Constituent Assembly, when free speech was being debated, it was the Constituent Assembly which actually went in with an absolute level of free speech, which at least for 2-3 years was, supported by the courts of this country. It was the first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, who brought in the amendment and put in restrictions, which, started with reasonable restrictions and went on to muzzling free press.
I'll come to the larger picture, but before that, you have to
make sense, Rajdeep.
Honestly,
you will say it's a monkey balancing of Delhi Police. Yes. I will say every single person who was, putting in, there were just so many anchors on television channels. Hate speech should be booked against each one of them, and including Owaisi. Why not? Where is the monkey balancing? Did he not utter those words? Did he not allow his supporters to give clarion calls to behead Nupur Sharma?
He denies. He says that nobody. He says he has never used.
He has never to do a tutu meme debate.
No, I'm not. No, I don't want to do a tutu meme. No, I don't want to do a tutu meme.
It is the TV shows which instill hatred at an industrial scale in this country, and you are a stakeholder of this. Please understand that you willfully or unwillingly.
I'm not.
This is the matter of fact.
TV news channels do not start off every debate with a cockfight. I have not encouraged hate speech.
TV debate has become a cockfight. Till you do not stop that, till you don't go in for more nuanced responses from your panelists, this debate will result into hate speeches, and this is how it all goes out of control. Can't we all have a basic agreement to have some decent discussions?
Okay.
You will see, how this debate descends into absolute maddening thing because you have 4 people from 4 different parties.
Trust me, it will not. Trust me, it will not. Test me if you want, and if you can prove in any debate I have encouraged hate speech, I am willing to step down from this chair. If I have ever actively encouraged hate speech, it has been my considered opinion that yes, television has a role to play also in ensuring that we do not give platform to hate speech of the kind that is being found. But I'll come back to you, Rajat, in a moment, because you are saying let's have a nuanced debate. So let's try it. But first, I want to get the political parties to end their hypocrisy. Because each of them in some way or the other in all the cases I've listed don't seem to make the distinction between hate speech, offensive speech. Supriya Srinath, why don't you take it up? Because there is a Congress NCP government in Maharashtra with the Shiv Sena. A Marathi actress has spent the last month in jail because she shared a Facebook post that was seen to be offensive to Sharad Pawar or spoke about Sharad Pawar. And I'll bring Mr. Tapse in a moment also. But why don't you respond? Because you all are allies there. And in Chhattisgarh too, your government has filed FIRs against people for Facebook posts where there's a Congress government. How do you respond?
So there are 2 things that I would want to say, and I'm not going to call, the TV debates responsible for this. Yes, the TV debates have played a role in vitiating the narrative, in poisoning minds, in actually bringing hatred all to our living rooms. But I think we're all responsible for it in our own ways. And I will tell you why. There is a distinction between hate speech and offensive speech. Hate speech is one that creates animosity, that actively promotes violence, that actively vitiates the environment, calls for arms, is hate speech. But there is also offensive speech, and I will say, in public life, you need to have a slightly thick skin, because you will be criticized, you will be questioned, you will be held responsible for things that you're actually not responsible for. But of late, offensive speech now borders on completely fake news and lies. And I think it's very derogatory. I mean, we're talking about Mr. Pawar. I think a lot of the opposition leaders, including my own leader, Mr. Gandhi, has faced a lot of objectionable, absolute lies in the name of, free speech. And like they say, your freedom ends where my nose begins. And I'm all for free speech. I come from media. I think free speech is very valuable. We've had it in the country. But everybody has trampled it. And I think one of the reasons why people are emboldened to do it, because there is political patronage to absolutely hatred, absolute lies, absolute derogatory, absolutely reputation assassinating things. And who's responsible for that? Yes, that's not hate speech, that is objectionable speech, but you cannot assassinate somebody's reputation in the name of free speech, in the name of
character assassination.
Yes, character assassination as well.
No, you can file an FIR for criminal defamation, but when you then go ahead and arrest someone for 1 month for sharing a Facebook post, questions will be raised. And I want to put that to Mahesh Tapse, because he is from the NCP and the Home Minister of Maharashtra is NCP. This actor has spent almost the last month in jail, Mahesh Tapse, for sharing a piece which your party saw as offensive of Sharad Pawar. You have every right to file criminal defamation, but what do you go ahead? You ask the police to immediately arrest her, and arrest her under provisions which are much more difficult to get bail. How do you respond?
Good evening, Rajdeep and all panelists. Let me tell you that the post Ketki Chitare had shared, it was extremely objectionable. Members of our party were agitated and they filed a normal police complaint with the local police. One was filed in Pune, one was filed in Kalwa police station. And hence the police has taken a swift action in booking her under various sections. I think 153A, 298 and some other sections are there. After that, the first-class judicial magistrate has given the judicial custody. What I read latest now that she has applied to the Honorable High Court of Mumbai for squashing of the FIRs and also for the damages.
No, but why? No. But my point is, you file FIRs against her across the state. This has a chilling effect. What you are doing is, let us assume that she was wrong. I believe she was wrong. Just a minute, Maheshji. She was wrong in sharing that post. It was derogatory. But is that enough for someone to spend 1 month in jail?
See, this is a judicial process. I mean, if I can say that Anil Deshmukh does he deserve to be in jail, that does Nawab Malik deserve to be in jail, they are still
you cannot compare money laundering cases and cases of extortion with this.
It's a legal process, Rajdeep ji. You have to understand it's a legal process. We don't have any say.
Okay.
We don't have any say. We are not influencing any kind of...
Sir, you are using your police power. Come on, you are using the power of police.
Power has no role. Honorable judges of any court, whether it's the judicial magistrate or the Honorable Supreme Court judge, they are giving judgment based on the facts and evidence.
You're putting the ball therefore in the court's domain. Okay. Let me. No. 1 minute.
One thing I want to add.
Yes.
We have a freedom of expression under Article 19(1). We have a reasonable restriction under Article 19 to what Rajiv Shetty just said. We have 153 under CRPC, under Indian Penal Code, which again criminalizes enmity between different groups. So, Ketki Chitade, if she has a policy problem with my government, she's free to criticize. Everybody is free to criticize on policy issues. We criticize the Modi government and policy, but we don't get personal. We don't body shame any politician.
I'll come to those personal. No. You're saying okay, you're making a distinction between policy statements and personal criticism. Let's come to those. Just a minute, sir. Just a minute now.
Talking about body shaming Mr. Pawar, talking about his disease, talking about the hell is waiting for you. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. It was not expected from an actress, Ketki Chitade, and it has definitely angered the sentiments of our party workers.
Okay, you used the word sentiment, and I'll come to that in a moment. But Dr. Shantanu Sen, TMC MP, what happened 2 days ago is your West Bengal police goes on transit remand and picks up a YouTuber because he used abusive language against Mamta Banerjee. Now, I've got the language and he uses words which are definitely derogatory. But none of those words stand to me. They're abusive of Mamata Banerjee. Terrible words. Language used is terrible. I can't even say it here on television, the language used. But is abusive language enough to actually go and arrest someone, pick him up and take him back to Kolkata from Goa? Is that what the police should be doing? It's offensive. But is it hate speech?
See, Mr. Rajdeep,
Yes.
as you know that Article 19 of Indian Constitution speaks about freedom of speech. But let me tell you one thing, I will abide by whatever you are saying. If you say openly that yes, you can play that video if you have gone through really. If you say that you can play the video in front of your family members. This is not for the first time that he has been doing this type of things. He has been ridiculing and he has been mocking with several other items. He was mocking with
filthy language.
national anthem.
No, Dr. Sen, filthy language is not a crime. 1 minute. Filthy language is not a crime. Let's be very clear. To use abusive language is terrible, but it is not a crime for which you need to send your police all the way from Bengal to Goa and pick the person up overnight. Then you don't have the moral, you don't stand for free speech.
No.
It's offensive, but it's not a crime.
No, that means you mean in a decent country, in a sober country like India, anyone can say anything, anyone can use any unparliamentary, filthy, derogatory, abusive language in social media, in public, against anyone. Especially IPC 354 says outraging the modesty of women. If you really have gone through the video, you must appreciate whatever has been done by Calcutta Police or West Bengal Police. It has been done rightly, and this is not that this is the first complaint against him. It is me who lodged the complaint on 3rd of June after going to that video. But prior to that, there were many other FIRs against this particular person, who is a sort of a madcap. He ridiculed, he distorted Ravindra Sangeets, he distorted national anthem, he spoke foul about the
okay, so you're saying he's a serial offender.
Everything is in record.
Okay, you're saying he's a serial offender. Let me therefore
Can I please comment?
No, just a minute. Let me therefore get the Aam Aadmi Party.
200%.
Yeah, okay.
200%.
Let me bring in Aam Aadmi Party's Mr. Sharma. Mr. Sharma, you tell me now. In your party, you have gone, your police went to pick up Tajinder Singh Bagga, the Punjab police went to pick up Tajinder Singh Bagga because of defamatory comments against Arvind Kejriwal. And wanted to sort of put non-bailable provisions against him. He may have said things which offended your leader. Does it justify criminalizing him?
Well, Rajdeep, we all have to understand that as an individual, the freedom of expression that we have, and once we become a public figure, we are expected to behave in a particular way. Off air, in my family, with my friends, the kind of languages I use, I cannot use the same language when I am on air and hundreds and thousands of people are seeing me. So the difference here is that an individual and an influencer are different. When there is an influencer, he has to abide by certain ethics. You cannot go on, anybody, including me, including you. In the same program, when one of the panelists asked you, you said that you challenged him saying that you have never used offensive language. That means that people who are in public or holding public offices, or in short, people who are influencers. For example, during the time that I am on this program on air, I am an influencer. Millions of people would be watching me. So I have to, it is my bounden duty, it is the ethics that calls for that I'll use language that doesn't instigate people. The moment I start instigating people, it is a call for action.
No, if it is incitement to violence, that's different. If someone incites violence, that is certainly punishable, prosecutable. But if you make statements that are seen as offensive to someone in public life, is that enough? And that's, Rajat Sethi, where I want to draw you in again. Because social media posts by their very nature, Facebook, Twitter, you have all kinds of offensive remarks being made. Do those remarks, just a minute, do those remarks, Rajat Sethi, constitute in your view criminal offense? That's the point that one is trying to make here. It is one thing to say statements against the prophet, but if I make an abusive statement about a politician, there's an equivalence being drawn.
See, the problem that Rajdeep, that most of these politicians and their followers have is this holier than the king, more loyal than the king syndrome. Now they all want to make it a point, prove a point before the leader that we are more loyal to you, and then they go all out. And I think here the key operative word is disproportional. Disproportional action by either the state administrations to placate or please their political masters, or even for that matter, even the Assam police. What they did was absolutely meaningless, and it was quashed by the courts. I think somebody, a neutral arbiter, it could be the courts, who need to step in and say that these are the hard lines, hard red lines, where one cannot cross under no circumstance. Or we as a nation decide that France is the model. We go in for an absolute freedom of expression at that level, where, when Charlie Hebdo happened and numerous such related events were happening, it was Macron who came in and projected those cartoons on government buildings. That's the level of, absolute free speech.
Is that possible? No, 1 minute. Now, is that possible in a country like India? If I abuse someone's gods, or if I'm seen to denigrate God, what has happened in this case? You've got, in the case which started it off, this debate, Nupur Sharma was seen to have made derogatory remarks about the Prophet. Those who have now also had FIRs against them are seen to have made sarcastic comments or ridiculed the Shivling. Now, there's a difference between ridicule something and pass derogatory comments. For example, also in the Jignesh Mevani complaint in Assam, he was arrested by a BJP government in Assam. Why? Because he had said on Twitter, Modi worships and considers Nathuram Godse as God. Now, is that enough to send your police to go and arrest him? I'm saying, have we all lost a sense of proportion?
No, this is exactly what I'm saying, Rajdeep. This disproportionate actions which are coming in. More important cases are not getting adequate amount of state machinery's attention. And it is these frivolous things which are taking up the spotlight. The reason is this, that people, these followers, they are all throughout in this process that they want to please their masters. Let me tell you, barring a few such isolated cases where even the chief minister stepped in, the Assam chief minister stepped in and ensured that this gets squashed, because it was a meaningless FIR in the first place. Right. And the Assam police should not have done it. So but to go back to Mamata Banerjee and go back to Mahua Moitra, they are paraded as the beacons of liberalism and the beacons of free speech across all TV channels.
One minute, time on the show.
Their party is systematically has been abusing freedom of speech. They've been systematically abusing citizens' free right to express. The reason is that there is a coterie which constantly wants to protect a section of politicians and want to go after the other. Okay. That kind of a balancing act should stop, and we as a nation, facilitated by neutral arbiters like the court, need to tell exactly where the red lines are, so that there is absolutely no grey area for politicians to play around with.
Supriya Srinath, do you believe that now that you've made the switch from media to politics, do you believe that politicians are capable of making those red lines, or they are intolerant of criticism? Whether it's a Mamata Banerjee in Bengal, whether it is a Sharad Pawar in Maharashtra, whether it is a Narendra Modi or Amit Shah in Delhi, whether it is an Arvind Kejriwal in Delhi, you all are incapable of making these, drawing these red lines. If the supreme leader is criticized on social media, you better be ready to go to jail.
No, I think we need to cut some slack to the politicians having made this switch. Though I will first say one thing. Let's see what is happening and let's look for a solution. There are anonymous trolls who actually go ahead and threaten you sexually, especially for women. There's always sexual violence threats. There is character assassination. For men, it's blasphemous as well. So there are anonymous trolls. And then there are, of course, these influencers who are emboldened because they need to prove their loyalty to the king. The reality is that unless there is no political patronage, unless the message from the top is not flowing, and I'll be very honest here, I have seen television debates descend into nothingness over the last 8 years. I mean, they've become personal, they've become vitriolic. What was said by anonymous trolls on social media, by people who are faceless, who had no voice, is being said by party spokespersons today. I am seeing show after show, channel after channel. Today is debating hate speech, free speech, police action, Why is the BJP not participating in these debates? That's the big question. Where did it all start? The personal
Because
attack
the
from the Prime
BJP, the
Minister.
BJP feels that they don't want a repeat of the Nupur Sharma episode.
1 second, Rajdeep. Are you telling me the BJP is not capable of a decent debate? This is a decent debate. Is the BJP not capable of a decent debate? When the Prime Minister goes into an election rally and says 50 crore ki girlfriend, hybrid guy, bachada, when the Prime Minister says stuff like that, that is when people are emboldened to carry that message. And where did all the, state police running from one state to the other start? In Assam. And I agree with my fellow panelists. It's absolutely wrong. This is absolute abuse of power. I mean, you go and arrest an elected MLA, you bring him, he gets bail, and you frame him in another case. And you say that he was trying to misbehave with a lady constable. Thank God for the courts in Assam that actually put an end to that. But this is what the government is capable of. Are you telling me this happened without the political patronage of the Assam Chief Minister? So I also think, and I will say just one thing while I wrap this up, I think the responsibility is as much on politicians and on their followers. We need to lead by example. Let us control our language. Let us see what we say in public about our fellow politicians, and that's when these trolls get emboldened. They believe it's a good thing to say that. When you promote people for saying Goli Maro Dash Ko, you are telling your followers this is what is going to be your ticket to stardom, ticket to fame, because you make that man a cabinet minister. And this is case after case. You can go ahead and scan those cases, whether it is Adarsh Chaube or a Chand Qureshi. This has happened in UP because a Facebook post against Mr. Yogi was put. He was in jail for several months. So I'm saying we need to be thick-skinned, but this anonymity of trolls comes from the fact that you want to please the supreme leader who's actually speaking the language that you want to emulate.
The BJP will turn around today. They're not here on the show as a direct representative. They'll turn around and say Sonia Gandhi once called Narendra Modi Maut Ka Saudagar. They will then turn around and say there are congressmen who have referred to Mr. Modi in very derogatory terms. You see, the point is, are we all willing to be more balanced? I agree, television channels also have to be balanced. I completely agree that we cannot allow hate mongering on TV.
Rajdeep, I have just one thing to say. If a television news anchor decides that the show is not going to descend into cacophony and personal accusations, it is not going to happen. I have done shows with you.
Should Sonia Gandhi take back the words she used against Modi? Mr. Modi should take back the words when he used words like Jersey cow or 50 crore girlfriend. All of them. All the politicians started. You are now shooting the messenger.
No. There's a difference. There is a difference, Rajdeep. You are blurring the lines there. There's a huge difference. That was said in response to what happened in Godhra. The criticisms that come from the Congress or other political parties are happening in response to policy formulations. What is being said by trolls, the spokespersons and the BJP leaders, including the Prime Minister who's sending the message down to his cadres, is not on policy lines, it's personal. I mean, the whole reputation assassination of Rahul Gandhi. You think that wasn't personal? You think that was on policy lines?
Of course it is. I agree.
Attack us on policy.
I agree. And I want to draw a distinction. You're seeing Swami Yati Narasimhanand. Look at the kind of statements
he says about women. Forget about anything else. Forget about religion. The stuff that he says about women, I had hoped that the BJP would have stood up because he said some really derogatory stuff about the women in their own party, about some ministers. I feel sad for them that the party did not stand up and defend them against this man who's vitriolic, who was actually saying, I mean, how could he say the things that he said against the BJP leaders?
Okay, the fact is, and I will give a word to Dr. Shantanu Sen of the TMC, because in Bengal people have been arrested for Facebook posts against your leader Mamata Banerjee. If you want to take the moral high ground and take on the BJP and say, look at the way the BJP is misusing the police, you've got to get your own house in order. I come back to it. Statements made against Mamata Banerjee by this YouTuber are terrible. He has used abusive language. He should be completely ostracized. But can you, in this age of YouTube and Facebook, go around arresting people every time they put up a post, Dr. Sen?
First of all, with all humility, Rajdeep ji, I would like to remind you that there is a basic difference between criticism and abusing. In democracy, every political personality or every individual has got the right to criticize in a proper way. If Mamata Banerjee is not having that much threshold of tolerance, then when Prime Minister Narendra Modi used to come to Calcutta during election campaign and used to ridicule CM Madam by calling Didi, oh Didi, she could have taken some step. That is something different. Day in and day out, the BJP leaders, starting from the top class up to the booth level workers, they are criticizing Trinamool Congress leaders openly in social media. That's a different issue. But you just cannot use this type of filthy, abusive, unparliamentary language. Have you seen the video?
I have seen the video, sir. What seems to be happening, sir, I actually believe that you are, sir, today there are all kinds of abusive. Let me tell you one thing, sir. 1 minute, Dr. Sen. Every day on social media, I am ridiculed. People have sarcastic memes of me. I'm not going to the court and saying I'm going to file criminal defamation, or I could easily do it. Lies are spread. The point is, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. The point is, I want to make, just a minute, sir. I want to make this distinction. When you offend someone on religious grounds, you attract section 153. And you should, if you spread hate. If you incite violence, you should certainly face the arm of the law. But if there is criticism, and that's where Mr. Sharma, I will end with you. You tell me, your leader is criticized. Arvind Kejriwal says he represents a new politics. If he represents a new politics, why is he worried about what Tajinder Bagga has to say about him? Ignore him.
Yeah, the answer is very simple. You pick up any of the Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal's tweet and you will find a lot of abuses below that tweet as replies or comments. But that doesn't mean that Arvind Kejriwal goes on harassing or filing defamation cases against anyone. With Mr. Tajinder Bagga, as one of the panelists said, there is a very clear case wherein he is an influencer, and as an influencer he has the option of using a better language, but very consciously he uses innuendos. When you use innuendos, you are instigating people. And as an influencer, as a civil society, nobody has any right, including me on this panel, to instigate anyone. I have to use civilized language. The answer to this, the solution to this is that we in India can see how racism, the issue of racism was dealt in the West, or in India also, within the judiciary, we see that within the courts, the lawyers are hammer and tongs against each other. There are heated arguments, but when they address each other as learned counsel.
Sir, but the fact is, in the social media world, there is no respect for each other. The social media world has become partly the problem of the free-for-all.
Rajdeep, last time also I was cut short. So
yes.
my bottom line here is that if anyone is an influencer, there is an individual and there is an influencer. If a person is an influencer, he has a substantial following, he has a political life, he is a political figure, then he has to curtail his language. He has to use civilized language. The thing with individuals is different. There will be many trolls trolling Mr. Arvind Kejriwal. Every time he tweets, they can come and troll him, and Arvind Kejriwal will take it in very right spirit. But if there is a political person trolling him, body shaming him, calling him names, using offensive language, that means that that person, being an influencer, having an option to criticize policy, having an option to use civilized language, has very consciously chosen not to do that and consciously chosen to instigate people. So in India, I don't think even the constitution or the law...
Rajdeep, 10 seconds please.
Gives anybody that kind of right to instigate anyone.
Okay, you made your point. You know, Mahesh Tapse, what has surprised me is that Sharad Pawar was one of the most, let me say, a politician who usually had a thick skin. But it appears you NCP workers are more worried than Mr. Pawar. Mr. Pawar has not spoken about Ketki. You all are jumping around. This is the problem. You are more loyal than the king. Whether it is Trinamool, whether it is AAP, whether it is Congress, whether it is BJP. अरे मोदी के बारे में कुछ बोल दिया. अरे अमित शाह के बारे में कुछ बोल दिया. शरद पवार के बारे में बोल दिया. गांधी फैमिली के बारे में कुछ बोल दिया. कुछ करना है. That is the problem, Mahesh Tapse. You are the problem, not your leaders, some of them. I don't think Mamata Banerjee is as worried as you are.
No, let me tell you here. See, any leader, any supreme leader of the political party is the source of inspiration for the entire cadre. And any personal attack, see, if it's a policy attack, then it's a different thing. But if it's a personal attack, body shaming, personal derogatory remarks, so the cadre doesn't take it too well. Whether it's the BJP cadre or the Congress cadre or the Trinamool Congress cadre.
Yeah, but your sentiments, sir, you can't run this. This is not a republic of offended sentiments. Everyone's sentiments are offended on different things.
People idolize their leader. You have to understand.
But they are not gods. Sharad Pawar is not a god. Mamata Banerjee is not a goddess. Narendra Modi is not a god. They are individuals, mortals.
For any cadre, Modi ji is a god for the BJP cadre. So why can't Sharad Pawar be our god?
Okay. Okay, let me leave it then. Are our leaders gods? That we are in a republic of offended sentiments? We started off with Nupur Sharma's case and the manner in which the Delhi government now seems to be doing a balancing act. I appreciate my panelists joining us because